Hey guys, alright, so in this lesson we're going to do some more modeling techniques, some stuff that you could apply to your droid model or any kind of hard surface or mechanical model. So let's start out by, I'm going to create, let's see, I want to create like a hinge kind of coming off of a piston type scenario because those seem to be pretty prevalent within that droid design. All right, so let's start out by creating a torus. So I'm going to go create polygon primitives, and let's go to torus. Torus is basically a donut, and we could adjust the resolution of this to bring it down quite a bit, so we could start with more of a lower resolution shape. So let's do subdivisions around the axis. Is that what we want? Yeah, maybe we could lower that down a little bit. Let's leave that like around 16, and then subdivisions on the height. Let's bring those down quite a bit. Let's go ahead and put it to like 6, so we get this kind of hexagon like cross section of that. Let's leave it at that, and let's go and delete the history of it because we don't need this around anymore. We're going to start messing with this thing. So let's go with this selected. If I don't have it selected, just click back on it and go to edit, delete by type, history. So now that stuff disappears. We can't really make any adjustments procedurally that way, but we could start messing with the model itself. So I kind of want to make this more of a boxier profile. So I'm going to right click and go to edge, and then I'm going to double click this edge here. And what happens when you double click is it selects the whole loop of edges. It's kind of hard to see, but if I grab my move tool and I move, you can see we're moving that whole loop of edges. So I'm going to grab my scale tool, which is R, and scale that out so it's kind of in line with this middle loop a little bit. And then I'll do the same thing on the bottom. So I'll double click this loop, and you can see it goes around, and then I could kind of bring that out. And we could go in the side view. Oops, that doesn't work. I forgot when I'm screen recording. So I'll just go over here in this little button on the side. And I'm just going to kind of line these up. You can see I'm kind of just eyeballing them up here. Double click on this one again and kind of line that up. Doesn't have to be perfect. No rocket surgery here today. And then for the inside, we'll do the same thing. So I'll double click this edge loop here. I'll just double click on that one, and then I could scale this in a little bit. Maybe go to wireframe, and you can kind of see what's happening there. And then I'll double click on, see this one here, and do the same thing. Go back to shaded, which is 5, and then again I'm hitting 4 to go to wireframe and 5 to go back to shaded. And now maybe that hole's too small, so maybe I'll right click and go to vertex and just draw a box around all those center vertices. Now you just want to make sure, hit 4, go to wireframe, that you didn't by accident like select an extra vertice. So again, just kind of draw a box around those, and then we could go in, and then on the scale tool, instead of clicking the middle, because that's going to make them get taller, which that kind of looks cool, but maybe that's not what we want right now. We could actually click on this. It's the green square between the blue and the red. It'll allow you to scale in those two directions only. So you could make that as wide as you want. We'll leave mine right about there. So now we need some kind of structure coming off of this to attach to like the piston, let's say. So maybe I'll grab I'm going to grab some faces that are along the lines of one of these main grid lines. So I'll grab, like, right click, go to face. I'll click on this one. I'll hold down the shift key. I'll add that face, and this face. And then I'll go to extrude these. So what I'll do is I'll go to edit mesh, extrude, and I'm just going to switch immediately to my scale tool. So now make sure you don't click off of this. So scale, and then I'll kind of bring those down. You can see what that does is it makes like a little, almost like a, well, what I'll do now is I'll pull this out. So I'll grab that move tool and I'll pull that out, and you can see kind of what we got going on here. Next thing we want to do is kind of true up these faces here. Right now they're like at an angle with each other, and to make them kind of just go flat, I just, with them still selected, I grab the scale tool, which is R, and just grab on that one axis and just kind of squish them down to 0, and you can't go beyond that. So now they're flat and we have a nicer surface to start to work from. So now we could extrude again. We could go to edit mesh and extrude, and I'm going to grab my move tool and just move this out. And you know what, maybe before we, yeah, let's leave it like that. So I was going to say maybe we'll change the profile of this, but I think this will be good when we go into subdividing this. So let's kind of pull this out a little bit and leave that like that. So let's save our scene. File, save scene as, I'm still on my chopper project. So I'm just going to call this like piston, hinge, or whatever you want to call yours. So now let's make, let's go to object mode. So right click, go to object mode, and let's create a cylinder. So let's go create. Oh, also, before we do that, let's turn on wireframe on shaded. So normally we hit number 4 to see wireframe. We hit number 5 to see the shaded mode. Let's go up to where it says up here in our camera's viewport. To the top of that, you go to shading, wireframe on shaded, and then that allows us to see what's happening with the resolution of the mesh as well as like the shading of the mesh. So let's create a cylinder. So we're going to create polygon primitive cylinder, and I'm not going to really do much with it. Let's just go ahead and right click and go to vertex, and we want the vertices of the cylinder. So let's just rotate so we're not right clicking on the piston thing by accident. Let's right click and go to vertex on, it's doing it again. It's object mode. Let's see if I can do this. There's another way to do it. So if that's not working, I'll go back to object mode. If I have this selected, at the very top of Maya, there's these 3 buttons. And if you click on the one that looks like a little window with a blue corner with an arrow next to it, that goes to component mode, which is vertex or edge. So that's another way to do it. And this goes back to object mode. So those 2 buttons are ways to do that as well if the right click thing isn't working. So again, if you're in object mode, just select your cylinder, and you could go up here and click on this little button, and it brings you to vertex mode. And what we're going to want to do is just select all those vertices, and I want to rotate this cylinder this way, but I don't want to eyeball that because we want an exact rotation. So I'm going to undo that rotation. If we double click on our rotate tool, there's a step snap section we could turn on. So we could go to, let's do relative. And what it's going to do is it's going to snap every 15 degrees, which is fine. And then we could rotate, and you can see it's like snapping and snapping until we're horizontal. And then I'm just going to turn that step snap to off, because if you leave it on and forget it later on, you'll be wondering, why is my rotate tool acting funny? So just turn that back off and then close that tool setting. So we can grab our move tool and move this over. And maybe let's scale this up a little bit, or you know what, we can leave it as is, I guess. We'll scale it. So let's stretch it out a little bit, and then maybe scale it like this, and then I'm just going to move it over further so it's kind of maybe a little bit somewhat close to the other shape. So the next thing we want to do is we want to be able to connect this piece to this piece. So the way we're going to do that is, and let's go back to object mode for a second. So I'm just going to click on that button up here, this one. You could also right click and go to object mode. Let's select that cylinder and delete this construction history. So let's go up to edit, delete by type, history, and let's save our scene. So Control S. So you can see if we go to kind of match up the edges of this thing, we have a few extra edges here that won't match up, but we have one on the corner that's going to match up. We have one in the center that's going to match up. Then we have this one on the side that's going to match up, but this one needs an edge to match up with as well. So we'll have to add in some extra edges on this shape to match up with this one so we can connect them together. But before we do that, let's create a spot on this shape. So let's go to, trying to think the best way. So let's actually select all the faces on the face of this cylinder. So I'm going to right click, go to face, and I'm just going to click around. You could draw a box, you could do it however you want. Like a fast way would be to draw a box here, and then it gives you too many faces, and then you just hold down Control and then draw a box to deselect these extra faces. I guess that's the best way to do it. And let's go to extrude, and we'll go to edit mesh, extrude, and then right away I'm going to switch to the scale button, or scale tool, which is R, and then scale this down. Like that. Then we could actually hit delete because we want to make a hole here. So let's hit delete like that. So now we have this hole in our cylinder. Let's go back to object mode. So right click object mode, and I'm just gonna hide this cylinder for a second. So I'm gonna select the cylinder, go into the channel box here, and then where it says visibility, click on that where it says on, and then hit 0, enter, and that hides it. It's still in the scene because we can see it in our outliner list here, but just not in our way for the moment. All right, cool. So let's, we're gonna have to modify this shape quite a bit, and I don't want to have to do it on both sides. We could just use that mirror function later on. So let's delete half of it. So let's click on our piece of geometry here, right click and go to face. And I'm going to switch to the top view. So again, I can't use the space bar because I'm recording my screen, but I'm going to click on this little 4 view button here and then zoom in on the top view and just select half of this thing. And you don't want to select past the line because then you're selecting more than half, but select like right up to that midline. And then I'll go back to my perspective view. So you see now I have half of that selected. I could just simply hit backspace. And then we want to make a hole here to attach to the other shape. So let's select these 2 faces. So click that one, hold down shift, and click this one and hit delete. Make sure you didn't delete any other faces by accident. So now we could go ahead and add those extra edge loops in. So let's right click and go to object mode. And if you guys remember, we went to mesh tools, insert edge loop, and And you know what? We can actually mirror from top to bottom on this. Let's not worry about that too much. Let's just go ahead and drop a edge loop in like right around halfway between the top and bottom there of this section. And then we'll do another one roughly top to bottom there as well. And then we needed 2 on the top here and then 2 on the bottom. So let's do 1 and then, oops, that's not letting me do it. 2, and then go on the bottom, and it looks like it went around, so that's perfect. So now we could go to object mode. So right click object mode, grab our arrow, which is Q or the move tool, and select our shape. And we want to mirror this. So on mine, I'm going to look on my screen and I want to move from, because you can see the Z is pointing this way, so I want to move from the positive Z to the negative Z on mine. Now if yours was oriented a different way, it might be that you're going to mirror like, you know, positive X, or if it were like this, it would be negative X or whatever. So you kind of just have to see which way you're mirroring from, and using this little indicator down here in the bottom of the screen. So again, with my mesh selected, I'm going to go up to mesh and mirror, and then hit the little options box. And so I want to mirror across the Z, and I want to mirror in the negative direction. So let's see if this works. And it looks like it did, but it merged all these vertices here at the bottom together, which is not what I want. So let's undo that. Let's see if there's a way to fix that. Okay, so let's do, instead of merge border vertices, maybe try do not merge borders. Let's try that. So that looks good. Let's see if it actually welded these two things together. And the way I'm going to test that is I'm just going to right click and go to vertex. And I'm going to pick one vertex along that seam that we just made and just move it. Yeah, and you can see it did not weld it together. That's fine. We could do that ourselves. So I'm going to hit undo on that little move, and then I'm just going to go to the top view and zoom in. And what I want to do is select a box around all the middle vertices, but I don't want any of them that are not right on the middle. So then maybe I'll zoom in, I'll hold down Control, which is subtract, and then subtract those, and then subtract these guys here. So I just have like a perfect selection, and I'll go back to the perspective view so you can see of all these middle vertices. I'm not clicking them because there's two vertices right on top of each other, and if you just try to click them to select them, you'll select some but not the others. So that's why you have to draw a box. So then we could go up to I believe it's under edit mesh. There should be a weld merge. Yeah, here we go. Let's go to merge and hit, let's just click on this merge under edit mesh. So that should do it. So now if I click on a vertex here and then go to move it, it's just one vertex. It's not two that are separate. All right, so let's right click and go to object mode. Now there's a bunch of construction history here. Let's clean that up. So let's go to edit, delete by type history. Let's save our scene, Control S. And let's turn that cylinder back on so we can look at it. So let's go into the outliner here and click on that where it says P cylinder. It's kind of grayed out. Over in the channel box, we're going to click next to visibility. We're going to turn that to 1. So now we have our two objects, and now everything should start to match up. So the next thing we're going to do is kind of create some geometry between these two that's going to bridge this gap. The way we do that is there's a tool called the append polygon tool. So that should be under, well, first we got to combine these. So let's grab both these shapes. So I'm just going to drag a box and select them both. Again, we're in object mode. we're going to go to mesh and combine. Just click it. So now when I click this, they both light up. They're both one object. That's not two separate objects anymore. There's just a gap between them that we have to fill. So the way we do that is we go to mesh tools and we use the append to polygon tool. And the way it works is you click from one edge to the other that you want to create a polygon. So you click on that edge and then this edge, and then you hit enter. But when you hit enter, it goes into like the move tool or whatever other tool you had. So let's go back to, again, mesh tools and append polygon. This time, instead of hitting enter, we'll hit the G key or the Y key. So let's click on this edge and then this edge, and then I'm gonna hit Y because that picks the last tool that you used. G does the last function that you did. So let's hit Y. And so what that does is it keeps us in that append polygon tool, but it finalizes that polygon. So again, we'll click here to here, hit Y, and I'm just gonna kind of go around this thing. Oop, and if you click in a weird spot, it kind of shoots off in space, so that's fine. Just hit undo. Looks like I have to redo this one here. Y. And then sometimes it's based on the camera angle, whether or not it gets a good click. So bear with me as I click around this. Again, I'm just hitting Y between each polygon. Not clicking, there we go. Halfway there. Now we could probably mirror, cut this whole thing in half and mirror it when we're done, but we're getting some reps in here. Getting close. Almost done. You can see where if we did not add those extra edge loops into that other shape, delete that. If we did not add those extra edge loops into the other shape, we wouldn't be able to match these polygons up one to one. Oops. And if you just hit delete, if you mess up and you click in a weird spot, I think hitting delete's better than undo. Enter. All right, cool. So now we're finally got this thing done. So we have our cool looking industrial shape. So let's save this. We got a bunch of construction history here, so let's delete that. So go to edit, delete by type, history, and let's add some more detail, because right now if I were to do a mesh smooth on this, let's see what it looks like. So edit mesh, mesh, and then smooth. It looks kind of cool, but not what we're looking for, right? So let's undo that. So let's add some supporting edges here. So let's go to mesh tools, insert edge loop. Let's throw one towards this corner, and just after that corner, maybe one kind of close to this transition, and then same right about there. And then we need some around these inner and outer kind of corners here. So one there, one towards the bottom. Let's do one here. And let's do one right there. And right there. And right here. There's already an edge here, it's kind of close, so let's go ahead and leave those. Yeah, I think that's good on that. Let's add one towards the end here, and then also one. Oops, it's not going to let us do that there. We could do an extrude there instead, so we'll forget about that. And maybe we want some extra detail here too. Like, let's go ahead and throw some extra edges in so we could get that detail in. So let's do maybe like kind of two like this, and I'll show you what I plan to do with that in a second. All right, so let's right-click, go to object mode, grab your move tool, which is W, and select your shape. So we need to, we couldn't add an edge loop here because of this weird geometry. Maya didn't know how to split that up. So what we could do is just right-click and select the faces here. So we could, I hit Q to get my arrow tool up, so I could just, I wonder if I could click and then double click. No. So if I click one, hold down shift, it allows me to add them in. I'm holding shift down as I'm clicking around. And just checking around, make sure I have no other extra faces selected, and then go to edit mesh and extrude. And instead of extruding, I'm just going to grab my scale tool, which is R, and then scale this in a little bit. So that gives us our little extra edge loop right there. Click off of that. So now let's do some of this ring of edges here. So I think this is what I was trying to do before. I think if you click one of these faces and then hold down shift and double click the face next to it, it'll select the ring of faces all around it. So let's do that again in case you missed it. If I click on a face, then hold down shift, and while I'm holding down shift, I double click any one of these faces next to it in the chain, it'll select a ring of faces like that. So then what we could do is go up to edit mesh and go to extrude, and then we could just push these in. You know, now we're getting some extra little detail, and let's hit extrude one more time. So hit G, and then I'm going to grab the scale tool, which is R, and I'm going to kind of squish in that second extrude like this along the one axis. And then let's right click and go to object mode, and let's go to mesh tools and insert edge loop, and then I'm just going to insert a loop outside of that detail, and then one just before it, just to support those corners as well. So then that way now, if we right click and go to object mode, grab our move tool, which is W, and then select this, we could go to, let's hit save, so Control S to save it. Let's do mesh and then smooth. And let's click off of it, and I'm going to turn off the shading too. So, I'm sorry, the wireframe. So I'm going to click back up to shading, turn off wireframe on shaded, and now we got this cool like industrial, you know, shape that you probably find a lot of stuff like this on your droid robot. So, or on any other cool shape that we're messing with. So yeah, there's that for this lesson. I think in the next lesson, let's get into some materials and texturing and lighting and rendering, because we haven't touched on any of that stuff yet, and we have about 3 weeks left. So yeah, that's the plan, to get some of that stuff in there. All right guys, I'll see you in the next one.
Roll, 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 roll.